I'll be honest with you. This is a game that could be done in 4 to 5 minutes eventually. Right? So now it might be silly. Like, what's the point in like rushing through these games? You should not rush if you're going to get questions wrong. It's more important to slow down and understand what you're doing and get them right. But the thing that was interesting about this test is that so I take it every time it comes out just out of curiosity. You know, what's it like to take this section time to not know anything about the games that you're about to do, which is what your experience will be on test day. And I completed the first game really quickly and the second game really quickly, and I was like, wow, this is going to be sweet. But then games 3 and 4 took a long time on this test. So it's like, okay. If you take 7, 8 minutes or 9 minutes on these first 2 games, you're not going to finish, most likely. I mean, maybe those games weren't as hard for you as they were for me, but I felt like for most people, those 3rd and 4th games took more time. Not that they were even that hard, they just required more than the average. So, in any case, that's why getting good at these can be pretty valuable. We have the 5 products, right? The order of the commercials is subject to the following constraints. So this is definitely an ordering game, 1 through 5. And then it says the pizza commercial must be aired earlier than the granola. Okay, so P is before G. Then it says S is earlier than T. Okay, well that doesn't link in, so I'm going to skip that for a half second because it might link in later. But the last rule just says F and S must be aired consecutively. So that's not going to link F or S or T into PG. So PG is going to be its own little chain. And I'm going to write S is earlier than T. And then I'm going to put F and S next to each other because we know that F and S are consecutive. I don't know their order though, so I'm going to go ahead and do an arc there to show that they're going back and forth. Sound good? Now, we haven't talked a lot about how to test for whether or not you should do worlds, but just to recap here, to the extent we have talked about it, what I'm going to look for is I'm going to look for the variables that are the most constrained. I'm going to then ask myself how many places can they go, and if it's between 2 and 4, then I'm going to ask myself, does that seem helpful? So here in this game, which variable or variables are the most constrained? F and S, right? For sure. That's a block, so they have to stick together. So that's question number 1. Who's the most constrained? F and S. Okay, second question. Does anyone remember? Yes?
If you were to make worlds half full, could you make them?
So that's the third question, and very important question. My second question is just how many places can I put F and S? So how many places can we put that block?
2.
Okay, I have a vote for 2. What are the 2 places?
1, 2. 2, 3.
2, 3, yeah.
And 3, 4.
3, 4. Okay, so you're going to change it to 3 places. Okay, so now notice those 3 places, that means that if I were to create worlds, I'd have to create 3 worlds. That falls within the 2 to 4 worlds general rule that I like to follow. Granted, I've created worlds, 5 worlds before, I've created 6, but those are really rare circumstances. In most cases, if you're going to do worlds, it's only going to be 2 to 4. If you're doing 5, 6, 7, it's like, well, now you're spending so much time setting up your diagram that it probably doesn't make sense to do so. You might as well just answer the questions individually. But here, FS can go in 3 places. So first question, who's the most constrained? FS. How many places can they go? 3. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. All right, so my last question is, how helpful would it be to make worlds on the basis of these 3 assumptions? So this is a question you have to answer somewhat in your head, right? Otherwise, you're just creating the world. So of those 3 places, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, which one is the most helpful? And by helpful, I mean is going to constrain variables the most.
Last one?
Last one. Yeah. So if FS goes in 3, 4, what happens?
T goes last.
T goes there, and
P and J are left.
P and J or G go there, right? Okay. Well, so that means that of the 3 worlds, one of them is going to be completely full. I mean, F and S will be going back and forth, but all the slots are full. Okay, so that's a good start. Okay, how about what if fs goes here? What do you know?
We
P's got to go first. Yep.
and then
G
G and T can switch between the 4.
T and G can go in 4 and 5, and you don't know where they go, but you know that they go in those 2 slots. So that's essentially a full world as well, because all 5 slots are filled. So I've already hit over 60% of my slots being full. So even if world 1 just remains essentially empty, this is going to be worth it. Now my last question is, okay, well how many questions do I have in this game? In this game, we only have 5 questions. That's the minimum. You can have anywhere from 5 to 8. 8 is pretty rare in games. It's more common in reading comp. But in any case, I thought to myself, well, okay, 3 worlds is fewer than 5 questions. So, and they seem like they're going to be pretty full. And my guess is that world 1 is still going to go somewhat far. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. Right? So that's the test. Who's the most constrained? How many places can that set of variables or variable go? And how helpful would that be? And you don't necessarily need, you can't play it all out in your head, but you're starting to, and you're like, okay, I could see that this is going down some path. So to save time, I'm going to just go ahead and do my 3 right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. March, so we have fs is in 1, fs in 2, and then fs in 3. Those are my 3 worlds. When I do create the worlds, I always put the initial assumptions in first, and then go back and start filling them out. If there's a temptation to like put fs right here, and then start messing with that world, but the problem that you can run into is that you'll forget what your initial assumptions are, right? And here are my 3 initial assumptions. Okay, so now that I have the 3 worlds set up, I'm going to go to the world that's the easiest to fill out. In this case, it's world 3, right? So if these are my 3 worlds. World 3 is by far the easiest to fill out because fs is going to force t to go there. So I'm going to just go to the low-hanging fruit. We then have PG left, so I'll go ahead and put those in there. Sound good? Who wants to take World 2? Go for it.
P first,
Okay, P's got to go first, and why is that?
because it has to go before G.
Has to go before G,
Yes.
so why not put PG?
Because T has to go after S and F.
That's right, so there's not enough room to do PG, so I got to put someone before, and G can't come up here, so P comes up there.
And then GT and they can switch.
Okay. T and G going back and forth. Excellent. All right, who's got World 1? Okay.
So 3 could be P or T.
Ah, okay. So you could put an or statement that has
Oh,
P
yeah,
or
sorry.
T.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I did or statements for each spot.
That's okay. Interesting. And then in the 3rd spot, you must have had all 3. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because P, G, or T could go in the 3rd.
Yeah.
Now, one way. So that's correct. What you're writing down is 100% correct. I like to have fewer variables in front of me, if I can. So right now, if you have an or statement here, and then you have 3 variables here, and then 2 variables here, you have, what is that, 7 variables, right? And so it's harder to move them around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, the variables that are left are P, G, and T. T is now a floater because it just has to come after fs, and it's going to be in these last 3, which means it can go anywhere. So T is a floater, and P and G are kind of floaters, it's just that they have a relationship to each other, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, P is going to come before G, and then comma T, because what that comma says to me is like, oh, I'm listing out these variables, comma means I'm not putting them in any order, it's just a floater. So now, as long as I keep P before G, I have captured all the options. If you focus, well, here's a question for you before I go any further. How many different ways can these 3 variables be arranged?
3.
How'd you get that?
Well, because they're interchangeable.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. So what are the three ways?
That order PGT.
Okay, that's one.
Or,
PGT.
Or TPG.
TPG. Yep.
And that's all.
So that's two ways.
So two.
It's all right. There's one more actually. You were right.
One
You just-
more?
Yeah.
PTG.
Yeah. One thing to make this a little bit easier is just to focus in on T and say, okay, T could go here and then you have PG, T could go here and then you have PG, and then T could go there and you have PG, right? So this is a super common arrangement of this like one thing before another and then a floater in a set of three variables. And if you can see that there are only three options for that, it's just going to be common and you're going to process that faster. Anyways, that's that. Those are all the rules.
So
Questions? Yeah.
would it be clever to go ahead and create 3 other worlds?
Oh, for the PGT.
Yeah.
Well, so let's go through the analysis. So here, well, who's the most constrained variable? P and G are equally constrained, but you'd have to create 3 worlds, right? Let's just say on the basis of T, and they would be very helpful, right? Because now each one would be essentially full. At the same time, how many worlds will I then have at the end of all of this? 5, and we have 5 questions in this game. I'm sort of inclined at this point to say, okay, like let me just jump into the questions, and then deal with this on a question by question basis. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be a toss up because it would create a lot of clarity that we're not going to have when we go through these questions. We're going to do a little bit more mental gymnastics because that stuff's moving around. If it were 6 worlds though, I'd probably be like, no, because you only have 5 questions. Like you're doing more work than you definitely have to do, or most likely. Okay, question 6. This is not an if question, but our worlds are so complete, I'm just going to go ahead and do it out of order. How many, or in order I guess, how many of the commercials are there any one of which could be last? So T could be last, right? Who else could be last? G. Okay, how about up here? T or G, right? Yeah, so 2. Okay, so the answer is D. 7. If the truck is aired earlier than G, so if T is before G, which of mine cannot be true? Okay, so if T is before G, which worlds are we in? Second. And we don't have to change anything, right? Thankfully our drawing reflects that. Okay, T is before G, and in the first world, if T is before G, do you guys see how many options there are? Okay, I hear 1 and I hear 2. I think 2 because you could put T here and then have G, or you could put T here and then have PG. Now, if you can see that, then we don't need to draw anything else. Which one of the following cannot be true? Could F be second? Yeah, because remember F and S are going back and forth here. We know this is a valid world, so F could be second. Could G be fourth? Well, down here, oh, I'm sorry, we're not in this world. Down here, G is not fourth. It's T before G, right? Could G be fourth in this world? Normally, yes, but keep in mind, what's the constraint that we have to deal with? T is before G. So if G goes here, then P is going to go there, and T is going to come after it. So G can't go fourth. If you can't see that, then it probably makes sense just to draw this out so you don't get mixed up. But this will get easier to just hold in your head, by the way. 8. If P is immediately before T. If P is immediately before T, what world are we in? Yeah, we're in the first world, right? That's the only world that can have P immediately before T. And what happens? What goes where? Okay. Yeah, you have P, T, and then G. That's the only way to do it, right? So P, T, G. Okay, so I'm holding that in my head. Are we okay with holding that in our heads? Like, is this crazy? You're like, yeah, you can do that. That's fine. But if you don't want to, just write it out. So it'd be PTG with F and S going back and forth. So PTG. Heck, let's just do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. PTG. What was the original? If P is immediately before T. Yep. And then we have FS going back and forth, and this is for question 8. Okay. Which one could be true? T is aired third. No.
No.
S is third.
No.
No. P is first.
No.
No. G is fourth.
No.
No. F is second. Yeah, because F and S are going back and forth. Okay, so that's the answer. 9. How many of the commercials are there, any one of which could be aired second? Well, here I just come back to this and I'd say, okay, who can be second? Who can be second here? F or S,
F or
right?
S, yeah.
Okay, who can be second here?
F or S.
F for S, it doesn't change anything. Who can be second here? G. So it must be 3 variables. Okay? It doesn't hurt, by the way, to just start listing these things out when you're going quickly through the game and just be like, okay, I saw F could work, I saw S could work, I saw G could work. That way you don't lose track of what you're counting up. Yeah.
Does it help that I arrived at the same answer, but using it completely?
Yeah, there's multiple ways to get there. Yeah. I'm just telling you the correct way. That's fine. Oh, this is a joke, kind of. You're like, okay, that's the right way. Got it. Anyways, so the answer's 3. 10. If G and T are not aired consecutively, T and G are not consecutive. Okay. Well, they're consecutive here, so that's not going to work. Could we avoid them being consecutive here?
Yeah.
Yes.
What would we have to do?
Put T between P and G.
Yeah. T between P and G. No, then they would be consecutive.
GPT.
TPG? What'd you say?
GPT. Because you said TSV last.
Oh, sorry. No, 10 it says G and
T.
T are not consecutive. So T and G are not consecutive. So they're not next to each other.
So GPT, they wouldn't be next to each other.
Well, the problem with going GP is then you're putting G before
Oh, yeah.
P.
Okay.
Yeah.
PG. So TPJ. TPG.
TPG.
What is
EPG. Consecutive means they're next to each other. So if T and G can't be consecutive, I've got to put T up in front of P so that it doesn't touch G.
T and G.
So it's going to be T, P, G. Let's just write that down. And I'm actually going to hijack the bottom of this diagram. So we have T, P, G, and then we have FS is still going back and forth. So that's in world 1, and then, so notice I'm down here. And then they're not consecutive here, they're always consecutive here. So that means for this question, I'm looking at world 3, and I'm looking at the bottom of my chain here. I didn't mean to make it confusing by bringing these things so close together, but I do this all the time. I'll just like hijack the bottom of a diagram so I don't have to take time to draw it, right? Okay, which one of mine could be true? Could F be last?
No.
No. Okay. Could G be fourth? No. Okay. Could P be third? No. Could S be second?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it doesn't matter. It could be. It's not must be. So that's the answer. All right. Questions about this game? Questions about games? Questions about the LSAT? Questions about life?
Wait,
Yes.
okay, this is probably a dumb question, but
Yeah.
so when you take it on the iPad now, do they give you paper that you can?
They do give you paper.
Okay.
Yeah. They give you a pen and a stylus. They don't give you pencils, but you're allowed to bring pencils in.
Okay.
So I would actually bring pencils because I feel like it's not a huge difference, but pencils are a little bit better, I think, for games than a pen. Because sometimes you draw rules and then you're like, oh, actually I want to erase this and add something right in front of it. Whereas if you have a pen, you're like, okay, well I'll just start over down here. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Okay.